Now, FalleN, the godfather of Brazilian Counter-Strike, has joined Furia, the best Brazilian team in theory, and Chelo has joined as well, his old mate from Imperial. They're replacing Safe. I know it's written Saffee, but it's supposed to be Safe apparently, and Drop. Now, this video is going to shock some people. Totally on brand there, right? Because they're going to assume I'm going to say everything about this is terrible because they're morons who don't watch my work. They don't even read the tweets in context. I actually think both pickups can be good, and I think Furia is going to be a much better team. First of all, you know how I do it. Look at the players removed, then you look at the players added. The first player I'm going to talk about them removing is obviously Drop. I think this guy didn't really do anything wrong the whole time he was in this team. He was one of the players that when he got added actually helped shore up the team and make them like a solid squad instead of just this super gimmicky, streaky team. And I do think he played a lot of bad roles. He definitely embraced that like support mindset, bloody grind set at this point in time. And I think him being cut now is just him being blamed for the failures of Art as an IGL. I think what happened is this team had so many bad placings, it really reminds me of Cloud9, guys. This is like, although he wasn't as good as Inters, this is like Inters getting kicked and fired from his job because of how bad Nafani is at setting the team up, the results of the team, and calling the game. So you kick the guy who's doing a solid job in the really hard supportive roles. I think that's so whack, if you ask me. Like, I think this guy, look, I get that they're sort of trying to go for a super team element here, which he wouldn't really fit. Like, he's not like some world-class player, even at his role. Like he's certainly like tier 1 level at the supportive role, but he's not like some monster who's going to overperform out of that role. So I get it, but all I'll say is this. I'm going to be very interested to see in this lineup, and I would have liked in the old lineup, keep the old lineup but kick Drop. Let me see one of you guys play his roles. Let's see how you do. Let's see how your numbers go down, shall we? Because I thought this guy gave everything for this team, and in the end he really did. He had to give his career for this team, right? Then there's Safe. I do think this was a good removal because he just looked mid in Furia. I have to just say it. He didn't ever look like he was in position to succeed. Didn't look like they set it up around him or gave him a chance to. I think Furia, I've said this many times on my shows, is like Team Liquid. They just do not fundamentally know how to play around a primary AWP star and set them up. So what they do is they get these players that are just whatever when they're in their team, and then they just let them sort of like AWP off here or AWP in the middle of the pack, or you don't get much resources or util. It's all about the riflers, because these are teams that were based around rifle duo stars. In Team Liquid, you used to have a trio of rifle stars, right? They're never about the AWPer. Their best AWPer ever is still to this day easily as simple. And even he doesn't play like a traditional AWPer, and sometimes wasn't supposed to be the AWPer in that team. We just take it up all the time because he's just so mega at killing people. The problem with the Safe angle is this. I think actually, to some degree, he might not have been able to handle the pressure of being on a big team, and maybe he didn't have the ego to get what he wanted. But I also think the issue is they never gave him a chance. When I saw this guy in Pain, he was so much better. He was a rising AWP star. He looked so legit that he demanded he got into a top team and was used properly. So actually, I'm going to be quite excited to see what he does in the rest of his career. Now, I could see this being a Phelps scenario where he just goes down and pops off completely in some smaller team as the main star. Adding FalleN, get ready for a shock. I think in this specific context is a good pickup. And I think it's actually one of the only ones available that could have fixed, I don't know about fixed, made Furia better, gave Furia a chance. Because FalleN was always overrated as an AWPer, even in his prime in 2016 and 2017, because he wasn't like a Guardian Kenny's traditional AWPer. He wasn't a guy you set the whole team up around. He wasn't a guy on CT who holds the best CT spot and just plays back and has all his teammates peeking for him and flashing for him, and then he's just cleaning up people coming in the set. That was never FalleN's game. What made it amazing is how he IGL'd as an AWPer. That was the thing, the other way around, how he AWP'd as an IGL. It was what he added to his IGLing that made it amazing that he was an AWPer. Because he was not like an elite talent in terms of raw skill in CSGO for my money. I mean, it's the latter part of his career, CSGO. The thing is, in 1.6, he was quite a skilled player. He was a rising talent. But it's when he used to do stuff like those aggro CT pushes, because he had people like FNX, Taco. These players are going to hold the fort down, going to hold spots, going to comp properly. So you can do these aggro pushes where it doesn't matter if you die because you're not the main star player. It's all set up around. And if you do the aggro pushes, you get info, you get an early pick, so you set the T's back a little bit. You can rotate off because you're smart. You're the IGL. You're going to com better than everyone else when you get the info. Then obviously, on T side especially, but sometimes on CT if they went to the other side, he was also obviously really good at late round closeout clutches. If he's either rotating in a CT, or he's late onto the site, he's not part of the entry pack, or he's at the back of the entry pack. When you put him in a 1v1, a 1v2, a 2v2, that's where he shines, right? The problem is, his main strength hasn't been hitting crazy shots, even in those scenarios, for years. Instead, it was being clutch, and most importantly, because of his rep, people seeing the name FalleN and shitting themselves. What they do against great clutch players, even Shock still gets this, is they play against you and they know that you're amazing at clutches, so they second and triple and quadruple guess themselves, and then they end up in scenarios where it's like they're doing just the wrong thing. If they just played with their first instinct, maybe they could have beaten you straight up in a 1v1 duel. Now, the key thing is, these are both things Furia doesn't and never had, and it could actually bring a new dimension to their game because they've got some of the other elements in there, right? I also think, by the way, a key reason why he can be the AWPer on this team is because he's a low economy AWPer. That's the point. Keyword AWPer. Obviously, you can never be low economy in terms of the overall game. The gun's so expensive and you have to save it and all that crap. But he doesn't need the game set up for him. He doesn't need to be the star, and he can't anyway. It's perfect for Furia, like I just said. He can just have the AWP, flash and util himself for other people, call somewhat, we'll get to that, and then still hit a few kills, keyword a few, and win the odd clutch. He's not the player, by the way, he's getting tons of kills. He's very rarely a guy who's getting above 20 kills in a game. Like, doesn't matter. We're talking about adding to what Furia didn't have and making the overall team better and more effective in Counter-Strike. The stars of this team are and will remain Keserato and Yuri. Just as, by the way, aside from 2016, when he had his big moments, it was more of an even team. The stars of 2017 SK Gaming, which easily could have won a major or two, by the way, were Cold Zero and Fur, far and away. Not Cold Zero and FalleN. That is a narrative, which is one of the reasons I've gone so hard against it, that just took over the game after that. I get people respect what FalleN has done for the game. I do. I get people like him. By the way, in person, he's one of those people who has a magnetic, hypnotic, charismatic effect. You'd have to like him. How couldn't you? He has that sort of appeal to people. But the problem is this. I can think critically. I can actually look at what's going on. I know things behind the scenes people don't know. And so as a result, there are certain aspects of some of his business moves in the game I think are just flat out dishonest. They're very, very self-serving. They're incredibly cynical, and a lot of them are just about money. That's one of the reasons I don't like him, and then he's just insanely overrated for most of his career. But I'll get to that video, don't worry. That will come out one day. Now, my issue is him as the in-game leader, but even then it's not that big an issue. Like, put it this way, he's not going to be one of the best in-game leaders in the game. I think you can go and check this. He admitted himself from 2018 onwards that he lost his way and he lost his feel for the meta after SK Gaming. I think it's worse than that. I think if you look, his teams learned that style he imprinted on them, him and then later with Zeus as well, of late round style, man advantage strengths. And from 2015 to 2017, he was doing an amazing job. He maybe revolutionized Counter-Strike in that regard. I think, though, problem is, a lot of other people adapted to that. A lot of other people learned from that by playing against it. And so as his stars fell off in terms of raw impact and star power, his teams just became irrelevant. They just became like an okay tier 1 team and a dark horse team every now and then if they had a nice run, and then not even that good a team. And then eventually you saw what happened. Like everyone, the diaspora happened. They went out and then some of them came back to do their bullshit last dance. He doesn't have incredible strats, in my opinion. Look at his teams for the last, well, from 2018 onwards, and their map pool's just non-existent. They have 1 or 2 maps that they're just flat out bad on. They have a nightmare in terms of what to veto. And you look at what they're picking, they maybe have like 1, 1.5, 2 maps that they can be good on. And it's just having sometimes players like Cold Zero that would still even give them a chance, or Fur. Quite frankly, it was like player strength that allowed you to sometimes win games here, or having experienced people. The map pool fell apart, and that's usually a big sign of an IGL. If he has the pieces, and his IGL, and his map pool is bad, he's doing a bad job IGLing. That's a little lens you can apply if you're a fan. Now, the key thing is, maybe you don't need incredible strats on this team. You've got quite a lot of skill, actually. You've got some really good young star players. And most importantly of all, you've got some intangibles you're going to add. And then I'll just say this. One thing Furia always had, is why it's so sad they were so bad. They actually had quite a lot of creative stuff that I'm assuming comes from Art and Gary. They used to have some brand new smoke setups, or they'd have some like quite interesting ways to take a site with what util they'd use. And would they do like a rush or a fake or a double vote? Like they had some quite good stuff, actually. If they can keep generating that and then just give it to FalleN, now we can cook with some gas. Now, 2018 to now, I do think is so underwhelming. They had the odd tournament run in, it seems. I'm not talking about Imperial where they had no chance. I'm talking about the lineups where you should have had a chance. The Imperial project in general was a fucking joke. The results are actually pathetic, especially bearing in mind the fan hype and the expectations. And then all I'll say is this. Notice how the team got progressively better and better. Still not that relevant. The more the last dance players they removed for real players that are just good or up-and-coming Brazilian players who should have been in those teams. Now, my issue, obviously, with FalleN is the financial one, primarily, aside from being overrated, which is not only did he help them piss away so much money in Imperial, I think that's actually immoral to do that to someone, to sort of sell them a dream and tell them you can do X, Y, and Z, and then they spend loads of money and then you get out for it. I mean, I guess in this case, they got the buyout, right? So maybe that recouped some of it. I heard, and I said this before, everyone made it sound like it's just a legend, keep him playing. I like it when legends stay in the game. Don't retire until you want to. But he was taking up money and spots that much, much better players would have been able to have. And that's gross, in my opinion, when the old just feed on the young, when they're not up to their best anymore. And the young guy, it's his time now. I heard he had an insane contract. He was on really good money in that team to come last place and second to last in tournaments and to just be a bomb and never go anywhere close to the top 8 of a major. He was getting big money to do that, guys. There's way better IGLs and players that were on half, a third, a quarter of his salary. So he was getting big money, and I heard he was allowed his own personal sponsors. He could just do conflicting sponsors in the same market as Furia, as Imperial if he wanted. That is gross. That means you're not even getting all the marketing value out of him because he's doing his own thing, making his own money on the side because that's who he's been for many, many years now if you've been listening to people like Richard Lewis. Now, I don't know if the Furia deals at that, but I'd almost imagine it has to be if you know how this... He's a very good businessman in terms of making money. Very cynical, but a very good businessman. I even think that's one of the reasons his IGL game dropped off. This Furia buyout that is reported is fucking absurd. It's one of the worst buyouts of all time. If that figure is like $700,000 is at all accurate. That is actually obscene because look, no CSGO player in terms of financials could ever be worth anything close to that, including, by the way, Simple, because they don't generate anything close to that back. You're doing it right now relative to the market, but even for market value, there's no universe where FalleN should be this amount. Like, that's more than Monacy, and Monacy was a massive gamble and wasn't worth it either. Like, this is device level money for a player that isn't device. So I think that's insane. You will never, ever recoup anywhere close to that money back, by the way, in revenue, unless you find an even greater fool to buy him off you in a year or two. People are going to go, but the marketing at Jersey, that's because you're a player who doesn't know anything about sports or esports, right? Do you know how much you make off a jersey in esports? Doesn't matter if they sell it for $30, $40. You might make like $5 to $10 max. The reason why teams don't go hard is it's not a big money maker. It's not really worth their time. And you're never selling anywhere close to the amount of jerseys you think you are. And as a result, you're never making anywhere close to these sorts of monies. And then you add in his salary as well and some of the other costs and the fact that he's diverting funds via his own site and his own businesses and sponsors. People who think this makes financial sense are cretins who just tell on themselves they don't know finances. He will be driving people to his store so he makes money, you fucking idiots. Not to make Furia loads of money. And also, Furia, I think the reason they can even do some of these things is because they've been so scummy themselves with how they've dealt with contracts and kept people in prison. I've heard there was just players, I could say names, let's say one of the big stars, would have been, not only would like one of the stars have been in MIBR SK years ago, it was MIBR, but then the other one of the stars wanted to join, had given them verbally his word that he'd join, I heard, and then he had to do that thing where he called up crying like, I can't go, and it was implied like he was mega pressured and sort of told him, we'll ruin you, wreck you if you go. That's who fucking Furia is, mate. There's a reason those guys who run that team don't say shit about me, motherfucker. Now, in terms of adding Shello, nothing to say bad about this. I think he's a solid pickup. He's obviously nowhere near a star player. It's not even where he's at in his career. But he did prove himself competent on Imperial. He was one of the best parts of that team. He was a big reason why they got much better than the 2022 Last Dance FNX lineup, which is a waste of everyone's time and money. Now, I don't have any problems with Shello addition. If you want to go for a super team, I think this is a good player to round out the team. Then let's talk about one of the players who gets to stay, though. You're going to think I'm going to flame Art here, because I think Art is a fucking dumb and an imbecile, and actually just an arrogant cretin who doesn't even know half the things he thinks he knows. This guy seems like an utter dickhead. And yeah, he was a very gimmicky player and ultimately a bad in-game leader. He pissed away some of the best players Brazil has produced in the last 5 years. But I'll tell you what, take him off IGL, put him back in that sort of like aggro CT push and T crazy entry type guy, make him a wild card player like a JW back in the day, like your Kindar in the modern day. Actually, I think he can be a good player at that role. I think he can contribute. I think as like a 3rd star, he's a really solid, because Thorin should be the 4th star in this scenario, the 5th star. He should be the last. He shouldn't even be a star. He should just be a supportive AWPer essentially, but just playing a bit more aggro. I actually think that this guy as a 3rd star can do a very good job, and the dynamic of what he can bring to the team can make Furia dangerous. It's why going to that safe style that they tried at the end when he was still IGL showed he's a bozo. And I think even the Gary guy, mate, first of all, they had their best ever major run where you weren't even there. And then secondly, you're making them try to play like an old school Astralis with this lineup of players. Like, fucking hell. Are you watching the game? Are you watching from sort of outside your... Oh, shit, yeah, no, that's a little bit... Touched a nerve there, didn't I? Talking about that coming outside of the game, looking at the bigger picture. Oh, yeah. We'll just pretend that didn't happen, eh? Then, how about this? I think if you take him off IGL role, turn him loose like he used to be, I think actually his role not only will work, but I think if you make him secondary caller, it's even going to be better. Like, he's actually going to add and give info to FalleN, whose read isn't necessarily there on the meta, that's going to make them collectively, by committee, a good IGL. Because I actually think, in terms of the info he's going to get from his pushes and the space he's creating, if you create the space in your secondary call, you can tell me, right, come in now. Like, there's no. That's how you are a fast team to react. It's not from some sick mid-round call from FalleN miles back with the AWP. This could actually work. I actually think this is all in all. If you look at the pieces, they do what a good team does. They enhance some of the strengths of the team and they cover each other's weaknesses. So it doesn't matter that Art and FalleN are flawed players. They can potentially collectively cover each other's weaknesses. I actually think the potential for this team is big. I think the in-game leading part isn't that big a deal, like I've just said, and for the reasons why. If the fragging aspect can work, Keserato can be the best rifler in the world. Maybe he was for some months. Maybe in this team, by the way, he has a shot to be the best player in the world, to a top 3 player of all roles. Yuri has never been 2019 Yuri. He's never quite gotten back there, but he's still a strong player. I think if you put him in the right place, I don't know where his mental's at, but you put him in the right sort of roles, set him up correctly, give him his CT spots, I think he can be a strong player again. So you've got a solid rifle duo there, above average, a good rifle duo, maybe even a great one. Art can just be turned loose. Shello will find a way to fit in. FalleN can add some intangibles and clutch again with a low econ AWP. This team can be a top 5 team in the world again, but for real, not because it's a weak top 10. They could even do a miracle run and maybe win a tier 1 trophy. I've been pleasantly surprised during the time I've had my Patreon and my Patreon community, the Skrilluminati, by both the financial support they've provided and the moral support. And so this video was kindly supported and made possible by Starlust, Theo Buenzli, Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Torin, Jensen Goh, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Bot Pounder 420, Yurka 86, Tosh, and as always, you know it, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to ask a question in one of those AMAs where I tend to go pretty in depth? Sometimes they even spin out into their own videos. Do you want teasers to find out who the upcoming guests are for the myriad of interviews that I do across esports? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest. We have a channel on my Discord where you can do that if you're at the right tier. And of course, you could potentially take part in one of those lengthy esports discussions with me about whatever is on your mind in the scene. Well, if any of those perks sound tantalizing, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.